Jasmine coming at you, and this video is actually going to be the tech video that I promised. How I want to approach this is actually looking at the most impactful organizations founders between Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, Mark Zuckerberg, Larry Page, and Bill Gates. You really have a lot of firepower underneath you as far as the tech industry goes. But I think people don't really realize how far-reaching these men's influence really is, just beyond those main companies that they're known for. So that's my goal, is to break some of this down for you guys in a way that you can keep that in context as you look at things unfolding. Be aware that this video is not supposed to be a religious end times video. It is really a informational tech video. So without further ado, let's get into it.
Most people think of Jeff Bezos, they automatically think of the online consumer retail side of Amazon. Not really Amazon Music, which is a competitor to your Spotify and Tidal and your Apple Music. And they don't really think of Amazon Studios, which is a competitor to Netflix. It's been competitive enough to win several awards in the film and the miniseries categories over the last couple years. So definitely a force to be reckoned with there. And they don't even think about the logistics side of things, which Amazon's internal delivery service, AMZL, certainly crushing the game as far as their deliveries go. There's partnerships with the United States Postal Service to augment the delivery services. So Amazon has exclusive delivery rights with the United States Postal Service on Sundays, which over the last few years has been financially keeping the United States Postal Service afloat. Amazon Prime Air is Amazon's drone delivery service. The FAA recently approved that in the last couple months to actually be able to start drone deliveries to customers. UPS and Walmart have also decided they're going to follow suit, and so we'll start seeing drone deliveries in probably some of the bigger city areas here shortly. Amazon Web Services, which I'll cover at the end of this little session, is another aspect of Amazon that most people don't even think of when they think of Amazon itself. But Jeff Bezos is also involved in other things. As far as communications and media goes, he is the owner of the Washington Post, and so obviously it's very influential. People want to be well represented on that platform. So ZocDoc, Juno Therapeutics, Haven are all services that are focused on the medical industry. Unity Biotechnology I find most interesting because it has a focus on the senescent cells. So these cells that are dying, and its attempt to figure out a way at the cellular level to halt the aging process. And so while this would be great for disease and illness, I think with this youth-centered culture that we're in, if you were to essentially find the fountain of youth and slow the aging process, that would be a major game changer for any biotech company. So I just think that's a really interesting one. Realogy is a pretty new acquisition for Jeff Bezos, but actually it was pretty timely. The real estate broker world hadn't been as forward thinking on technology as a lot of other industries. I would say with the exception of maybe Keller Williams, Realogy has been able to capitalize off of that gap for people who maybe wouldn't have tried digital real estate previous to COVID. The Partnership on Artificial Intelligence for the Benefit of People and Society, that's an organization that all of these guys that we're talking about today are involved in, so I won't really go into too much depth with that. Blue Origin is an aerospace and defense branch of Bezos's portfolio, and so you've got rockets and spacecraft conducting different missions, and they have gotten partnership agreements with NASA as well as the new Space Force. You see how much involvement they have with the federal government. Amazon Web Services, which is a cloud-based server hosting system It offers lots of other services that maybe I'm not tech savvy enough to really comprehend or explain. There's several federal, state, local government organizations like the FBI, CIA, health services, as well as several states that are all hosted on the Amazon Web Services server. And so finally, when you look at any local job board in a major metro area and you see that Amazon is postings for retail personnel, you can see that they're starting to move back into the brick and mortar space. You really are going to start seeing more involvement, I imagine, at the local level with Bezos and his team, just to ensure that the local governments are making things as agreeable as they need them to be lucrative and successful. So I think it's very unfortunate that people don't realize how entrenched Jeff Bezos and his different organizations are within the federal government structure here in the United States, and I imagine even internationally with some of these partnerships and projects that he's involved in. People are very familiar with Mark Zuckerberg when they think of Facebook and Instagram, maybe less frequently when you think of Facebook Messenger and even WhatsApp, which is a newer acquisition. WhatsApp is used on more of a global scale, and that actually put Mark Zuckerberg back at odds with Sequoia Capital. He has a long history of being at odds with them anyway, but they are a venture capital fund that has a history of doing really, really well with various companies and having them turn into unicorns down the road. So at this point, I think Mark is financially stable enough to not really need their help, but it's not an organization that you really want to be at odds with if you're in the tech world. But it is what it is. Oculus, which is a virtual reality system that a lot of gaming interfaces are using. You've got the virtual reality glasses, as you are probably more familiar with. Again, I think trying to keep it lighthearted with the social media and the gaming systems and things. But when you look at the various organizations that he and his wife Priscilla have founded, such as the Chan Zuckerberg Initiative and Chan Zuckerberg BioHub, you see that they are really emphasizing education, so really trying to encourage STEM and tech education for people who maybe otherwise wouldn't have had those opportunities. The Chan Zuckerberg BioHub is really focused on mapping cells, trying to find solutions to disease and COVID in particular right now. So again, just a really strong emphasis on education. Similarly, we see in Facebook's AI research that tends to hold true. A few years back, we saw the chatbot program for Facebook began to talk to itself, creating its own language, and the engineers shut that program down, made the right decision in that department. And right now they are working on detection methods for deepfakes, DEEP fake, if you have not heard of that yet. It's essentially put another person's face on live action video and it looking very real to the point of not being able to determine if it is genuine footage or not. And so Facebook is getting ahead of that. It's just a really great use of artificial intelligence technology, and I think with Mark Zuckerberg having had so many different accusations about his platform spreading fake news and negativity, I think he's trying to make a conscious effort to put in as many fail-safes as he can to try to salvage the reputation of what it is that he stands for. So Elon Musk is probably everybody's favorite not so bad boy of tech. He is the founder of PayPal. He's the founder of Tesla and SpaceX, and that's, for the most part, what most people know him for. So SpaceX is probably the organization, I would say, that's given him the largest amount of leverage when it comes to interacting with government organizations. And they have been awarded billions of dollars from the government to complete various projects, some coming in the form of contest awards, some coming in the form of contracts. SpaceX is finding itself in the good graces of NASA. the International Space Station, as well as the United States Space Force, which is the newest member of the Department of Defense. Again, it gives them a lot of leverage. Solar City starting to, I guess, lease out solar panels to homeowners and businesses, and they have been awarded, again, funds from the Department of Energy. I don't know that it's one of his more successful endeavors, but it clearly is near and dear to his heart, trying to conserve energy. Infrastructure, that's where the Boring Company has arisen from. They are working on several projects in various American cities to build tunnels and hyperloop transportation. We just continue to see these tech giants intertwine themselves with the government. And as far as artificial intelligence goes, Elon has been outspoken about his concerns about its development for many years. And Neuralink, we know, is really born from that fear. He did a recent demonstration about what it would be like, what it would do, what it could do, what it would collect, how it could improve research. But essentially, if we know anything about Elon, is he's attempting to find a way to allow humanity to compete with the impending invasion of artificial intelligence. And while the idea is very noble on its face, it really is not a game that I think that we want to play, because I don't think anyone is really sure what this technology will be able to teach itself, what it will be able to do, how it will change personalities and abilities and things. And we've even seen how social media negatively impacts our behaviors, and that's not even being directly implanted into our physical bodies. And so again, I think on its face it's a great idea, but it's still waiting FDA approval. But this is likely to catch on. People who have the same concerns that Elon has may very well volunteer themselves as tribute to be part of this Neuralink program. And I think that that's a really unfortunate thing. But I do agree that artificial intelligence is something that we should really be taking seriously, because it definitely is not going away. And if it falls into the wrong hands, that's going to be real problematic. Alphabet is the parent company for Google, of which Larry Page is the founder. Singularity University seems to be an international chain of schools that are training up some of these new generations of leaders in tech. There is a venture capital segment of Alphabet similar to Sequoia Capital. Capital G is providing resources to what is deemed to be really successful companies to just help them be even more successful. X is a kind of like a secretive lab, like a think tank. We really don't know what's going on within X, but I believe Waymo and the self-driving car program fell under X once upon a time. Obviously, one of the perks of owning Waze is that you are getting real-time feedback from drivers on the road about conditions of roads and where police are setting up, and just traffic patterns in general. So that information is really helpful to plug into all your other projects. Like Uber back in the day, one of the big things that they would always say about their data is that they were going to use that data to help benefit the layout and infrastructure of these cities so that they can do better urban planning. And so we see that Sidewalk Labs is really taking on that same mentality of how do we optimize city planning and help provide data that would be helpful for them. The DeepMind program teach artificial intelligence, help it learn. So one other thing that we're seeing is a lot of tech companies dabbling in biotech, and so you see with Verily as well as Google's Calico project this deep dive to try to find solutions to things that we haven't been able to resolve just with bioscience alone. Radio frequencies have to be licensed out by the FCC, so whether it's your radio, FM, AM on your radio in your vehicle, or if it's the 2G, 3G, 4G, 5G now, there was a band of frequencies that weren't really optimal for communication that had not been used. And so now that we've run out of bandwidth and everybody needs to be on their devices, we've got COVID, everybody's working from home, those sort of things, there's this big push to move into the 5G space that a lot of companies were already preparing for. And so the auction 105 recently happened a few weeks ago, and it ended up being a $5 billion auction for the 5G slice of frequencies. And I don't think that the report fully lists everybody who's on there just yet, but I believe Motorola was amongst the bidders for some of those frequencies. So obviously they're expanding, but again, you just see again that connection with companies paying millions of dollars to the federal government obviously gives them some sort of influential status amongst other organizations if you look at it from a big picture view, as well as just this whole idea of being involved in city planning and those sort of things. So again, I don't want us to be short-sighted and just think Google is a search engine organization. That is just a very small sliver of what they're doing, and they're utilizing that data to advance as kind of like a technological superpower. And so last but not least, we have Bill Gates. Most operating systems in a professional setting are still Windows-based. Most of the video conferencing systems that are being used in the workplace are still Windows-based, whether that be Skype for Business or Microsoft Teams, or even in some cases Yammer and LinkedIn, which is the social networking platform that people are using for business purposes. You really have Bill Gates having cornered the market completely for professional computing infrastructure. So Bill and Melinda Gates have been pouring a lot of money over the last several decades into these various programs that are intended to make life more beneficial for people who are underprivileged. And by underprivileged, I mean more like third world underprivileged, not first world problems. People who are facing sanitation problems, people who are facing concerns with their own housing and having instability in terms of their food. So they are working actively to provide solutions to that, and many of their efforts are being challenged because they're seemingly targeting people who have no option to resist them, I guess, at this point. So, for example, the International Rice Research Institute that the Gates have established created this product called Golden Rice. And it's a synthetic rice, and while in theory it's great to be able to provide a more nutritious meal source for people, there are some concerns about the effects of it, and government organizations have not been super inclined to clear it. People who are, of course, facing food instability and those sort of things are more than willing to give it a shot. And so it's things like that that are concerning to people as they look at the new development of these different products. One of their projects that would turn sewage into energy and water. And again, theoretically, that's a great idea if it works and is sustainable. I personally probably should have more faith in water purification, but it's really things like ID 2020, a global digital identification network for access to various government services. Now, Aadhaar is a great example of that happening in an underprivileged community, whereas in Sweden, they have a similar system in place, and it seems to be working well to provide efficiencies and make their lives more easygoing. The Vaccine Alliance has partnered with ID 2020, both of which are Gates Foundation organization, so that's not really a surprise. But the MasterCard Trust Pass that is coming soon is essentially some sort of combination between vaccine access, your digital identification, and commerce. And it's being test run in underprivileged communities, third world countries, and it's causing a lot of uproar from people who either A, don't feel that it's right to test these things on people who are too poor to resist, or people who have concerns that this is, again, ushering in
some sort of organization towards the end of times, like the Mark of the Beast or something like that, which ironically, just for kicks, the certification to be an organization that's within the ID 2020 body is actually called receiving your certification mark. So it is comical that they chose to use that terminology, whether intentionally or not, to indicate that a company is certified to distribute these services. Another organization that is receiving a little bit more kickback as people learn about it, Solar Radiation Management Organization, is essentially an attempt to cool the climate, and the funding is being provided in African countries and South Asian countries to basically test run this stuff. And again, that's where the pushback is coming, is that people are saying that these countries that maybe don't have resources and other opportunities are basically being asked to test run what could potentially be dangerous technologies in an attempt to better their own lives. And obviously, these organizations, Gavi and ID 2020, and a lot of the different Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation organizations are closely tied into the United Nations, World Health Organization, lots of other international groups, whether they're international NGOs or charities or just government organizations in various countries. Not as many in the United States, but externally, since again they're really targeting these third world countries. But one of the bigger concerns, just in my view, is the Giving Pledge, which actually is a community of billionaires that have created some sort of promissory pledge to donate large portions of their proceeds and income to philanthropic efforts. And again, while noble on its face, you now have Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation in the pockets of these super elite people across the globe. You can't tell me that doesn't increase their influence. We'll see where this takes us next time. Have a good one.